Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Petty Chevy Build Series. In today's episode, I think I'm going to make my first attempt at my floating fenders. Stay tuned to see how it goes, here on the Yankee Auto Systems. In this episode, I really want to try and focus on the work that has to be done and try and not make this drag on and on forever. I know, I say it a lot, and I really get carried away in the amount of information that I can give you. But I really, and I truly mean this, I really want this to be a shorter episode. Because ultimately, I don't know how it's going to turn out. But here's what I have in mind. Does anyone remember I made a video that was fast forward to failure when I was trying to figure out a rear bumper setup that would work for this car? And at the time, I did not want to cut down the rear horns of the bumper. I probably could have made it work if I would do that, but I just did not want to cut down the rear horns of the frame rails. I didn't want to. But if you don't remember the video, you can see it right here. But what I'm going to try and do is repurpose some of those elements that I was going to originally use and already have cut up for my floating fenders. So how am I going to accomplish that? It's really crude and it's very Swiss cheesy, but here is a rough idea of what I'm thinking. So this part of the rear bumper that I had that I'd cut in half already and taken some material out of, as far as the way the front of it presents. Now this would be the right side of the rear bumper, and I'm going to try and use this on the right side on the front. I really like this edge that it has here that kind of points towards in the front and drops off in the back. Now, as far as everything in the center, I know it's garbage. I hope that there is some good metal to weld to or pick up on somewhere in here. But I do have a component that I can use to try and fill this space here. Now, I'm wanting to stretch this anyway, so all of this could and will have gone anyway. But I have an idea in mind of how I can accomplish that, so I'm going to go ahead and set up the time lapse, see if I can get stuck into it, and see if I can make happen what I want to happen. Let's at least try. So unfortunately, about half of the footage for this project ended up corrupted, and I don't have nearly as much as I wanted to present. I am still, however, going to show you what was uncorrupted and try and, the best of my ability, explain what I had, where I was going, my thoughts and process for this, and just exactly how it turned out. What I was working on here, since I had both bumper halves already cut in half and the louver piece tack welded on the other side, which would be the interior side of the floating fender, I was working on getting the exterior side of the floating fender tacked together so I could get a better idea of how my shape was going to work together and try and get this at least to one solid piece that I could bring to the tire and see exactly how it worked. Okay, so the time lapse gets to show you the work that I've been doing. Now I'm going to actually take a second to explain to you where I started, what I did, and where I'm going. So what I started with was the two pieces of the rear bumper that I had from the S10 project, because this thing was pretty rotted out and it didn't really serve me any other purpose. But I'm really good at repurposing things, so that's what I'm doing. I started out with a section very much like this. This is basically half of the rear bumper with some of it already cut off on the bottom from when I was trying to repurpose it elsewhere. Now, even on this one, you can see that there is a lot of Swiss cheese in the middle. There's not a lot of good spots left to it, but there is a good section of it that is still very whole. And that works out well for me, because ultimately what I did is I took all of these Swiss cheese sections on that first bumper and I cut them out. Now, so most of that metal is gone out of that bumper, which is now going to be the fender. And that's okay, because ultimately I was planning on cutting that down and stretching it anyhow, which is what I've been working on. So this piece is no good, along with the rest of the pieces that are down here as well. So then the next thing I did, once I had that bad section cut out, and then I had all of my cut marks from where to stretch out the fender, if you will, I then went and grabbed one of these grates. There are quite a few of them on the property. So I originally wanted to grab one of these grates to make kind of a louvered rear section for the car. I haven't figured that out yet, or if I'm going to stick with that. But this is a good flexible stamped steel material, so I can still use that. What I ended up starting out with, I cut two of them off in single sections, one edge and then another edge. And I then took one of the pieces and folded it. It is very pliable without anything else around it. The stamped louvers are still good inside of there, but I do have the ability to kind of roll this where I wanted to. I then took my pieces, my two halves of the fender, and put them up against the car, and I found out that, unfortunately, a single wide section was not going to be wide enough. I kind of thought that might have been a problem, but when you just put the single section up against the wheel, it is pretty wide. However, with the amount that I had to cut into right up against the rolled edge of the fenders, it just didn't leave me with enough material. So with my single pieces off to the side, I'm going to retain them. I ended up getting the other double piece that I still had left over, because thankfully I did not also cut this one into single pieces as well. This one is going to work a lot better. It fits a little wider than it should, but that's going to be okay. I can work with that. I'd rather trim some excess off of this to make it fit, instead of trying to figure out a smaller one that's going to fit. So what I'm going to focus on doing is, this would be the inner edge. Now these edges are going to be trimmed off. I may just follow this line here and trim these holes that are already there, but I do at least want the inside edge to be tucked behind the tire. As far as the outside edge, I'm not absolutely sure of what I'm going to do yet. There are a lot of holes in here, so I may have to go very high up and cut a line for these holes just to make it look decent. But then what I'm going to do is have that louvered section in between these two pieces of fender and have that be my actual center of the fender. So essentially I'm going to have these two pieces out on the side and then tack welded. For now, I'm going to tack weld them together to see if I can get that going. So what I'm going to focus on now is I'm going to take my inside edge. I'm going to leave it the way it is right now. I want to at least try and get this a little more whole before I start worrying about this rusted through section here. This is pretty bad. I'm going to need to do something. But as of right now, I'm going to work with what I have, and I'm going to go ahead and get it welded. Alright, so I was able to make some good progress, and for my first time doing this, I really don't think it's going too bad. It's coming out the way that I want it to so far. I've still got a lot of work left, but here, I'll show you what I have so far. So I have the two basic halves together already. This is the inside edge, and then this is the louvered section over the top of the tire itself. I then have the outside section here, and this is just stitch welded and tacked together just so I can get my shape correct. I did check it against the tire. It's a little wide, but I'd rather it be wide than narrow, because ultimately this wide of tire may not stay on there, so being wider still gives a little bit of options. But the next thing that I'm going to do is grind down all of these tacks and then start stitch welding the entire thing. Well, I kept on and kept making progress, and I got really far. I wasn't able to get the fenders finished today, but I did make a lot of progress. At some point, I just had to stop myself because I could have kept working until the cows came home. I mean, I kind of did keep working until the cows came home. So like I said, I wasn't able to get everything taken care of with the fenders today, but honestly, it's really a much bigger project than I thought it was going to be. And that's okay, I'm still committed to getting these fenders figured out, and this is a little more of the style that I wanted to go for anyway. So, we're getting there. Progress is progress. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel New Yankee Auto System, and follow us on all of our socials right here. Keep in mind that once this vehicle is finished, it will be for sale, so if you are interested, go ahead and hit me up at newyankeeautosystems@gmail.com. But for now, see you on the next one. So the reason why this episode is actually a standalone and not in series with everything else is because the floating fenders are out. We're not going to be doing that anymore. There's some timelines that are changing for the build project, and I do actually have someone that may be interested in the project. So I am more interested in getting the car complete and delivered as opposed to doing something custom at this point. It's not anything that I've decided, hey, I just can't do it. I'm more interested in getting the car complete and sold to somebody, and I can focus on my custom stuff later on down the road. So just make sure to stay tuned to the rest of the build and see how we finish off Petty Chevy and hopefully get it delivered to a customer in the near future.